Things just got way more intense in this year's Stanley Cup Final as the deciding factor in this final has just been revealed. We're going to break that down as well as why one team will prevail over the other in this year's rematch of the Stanley Cup Finals. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Hat-Trick HQ. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 72% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening around the league, of course, not just with the Stanley Cup Final, but all the signings that are happening, trades are coming up, the draft is soon. Be sure to go down below, hit that free subscribe button, and again, you get to stay up to date with everything going on in the NHL. But KC, it is time. We are coming up close on the Stanley Cup Final. The scheduling a little weird this year. I don't know why we have to wait a week, but let's get right into it. And I want to start with the players. We're going to get into the goaltending. We're going to get into all of that. And we're going to get into the deciding factor. There's one thing that I believe will separate one team from the other this year more than we saw last year. But let's get into the players. Let's start with Edmonton. I mean, this Edmonton Oilers team, on paper, I've said it on the channel before, didn't think they were as deep as last year. But that doesn't mean they're not playing as deep as last year. This is a business trip for the Edmonton Oilers this year. They cleaned out the Vegas Golden Knights. They made quick work, obviously, last round of the Dallas Stars as well, which I thought was even more impressive. They are playing some good hockey. What do you see from the Edmonton Oilers? Obviously, at the top of the list, we know who's going to be there. It's Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. They always lead the way. They're willing this team to win. Great leadership group. Love Connor McDavid as a player. But look at the rest of the lineup. They're getting scoring from almost everywhere. We know Evan Bouchard's going to, chip in for some points as well. Not even chip in, lead the way as well. But they have a lot of depth scoring this year, and I think they have a really good chance in this final.
Yeah, the one thing about the Edmonton Oilers that's different from last year is they got that killer instinct this year. They're just going and making quick work of all these series they've been through in this year's playoffs. I mean, Connor McDavid, this guy, he wants to win the cup. He knows what it's like to lose, and now he wants to get back there and win it. And Darius, I've seen this interesting stat where Crosby lost his first appearance in the Stanley Cup Final. So did Waino, too, and Gretzky. So maybe we see Connor McDavid follow the path of all these greats that he's been chasing his whole career. And I love this Edmonton team this year. Like you said, it didn't really look as deep through paper than what they had last year, but they are playing deep. We're seeing the offense trickle down this lineup this year, which once you got to the bottom six in last year's Stanley Cup Final and in the playoffs, there wasn't much offense being generated. But you see guys like Connor Brown stepping up and getting a goal when they really need one. It's just great to see this team kind of playing for each other this year. And like you said, it's all business. They're coming in to win the cup, and that's all they want to do.
Like I said, it's a business trip. And yes, there's parallels to other players like Gretzky and Crosby, like you mentioned, right? But let's not forget, just 2 years ago, the Florida Panthers made it to the final, lost, came back last year and won, right? So this happens a lot. This happens a lot in league history. So it's going to be interesting to see. On the Florida Panthers side of things, Panthers fans, we're not going to leave you out. Let's get into it. They don't have as high scoring, I guess, at the top of the list, right? The high octane offense from, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. But they have maybe some more depth scoring. And their fourth line, which we're going to get into in a little bit, is their best line, honestly. So what are you seeing from the Florida Panthers as well? I mean, this is a very deep team. They've won the Stanley Cup last year, of course, right? They brought in some really big pieces. I mean, Seth Jones is playing almost 30 minutes a night. He's been a great acquisition for this team. And, you have Matthew Tkachuk putting up points. He's third in points there, but I don't think he's even close to 100%. So I feel like that's going to be a factor in the series as well. But what are you seeing from the Panthers?
Yeah, this is a great retool kind of by the guys down in Sunrise. I mean, bringing in Marchand was a huge acquisition, one that was very unexpected around the entire league. And we've seen in the playoffs what he has done for this team. He brings that extra physical edge, but he's Mr. Clutch time in the playoffs as well. If there's an overtime in this Stanley Cup Final, you can almost bet that Marchand is going to score that overtime winning goal, because that's how good this guy is in clutch situations. As well as, like you said, Seth Jones was a great guy to bring in as well. Has been logging a lot of ice time, especially when Aaron Ekblad kind of was out for the first little bit in this playoffs. And I really like this team. I mean, they're different than what the Oilers played last year, which, may be tough for them to come in and go up against. I'm interested to see how that matchup is going to work out, because they're a lot more physical. I mean, they added a lot of big, physical, gritty, get under your skin kind of guys, and I think maybe the Oilers might struggle with that a little bit. But I really like what I've seen out of this Florida team. I did not expect them to go back to the Stanley Cup final at the beginning of this playoffs, but I think just the retool that they've done there, the way the goaltending has been, this team looks on fire.
It's been unbelievable to watch them, right? What they've done the last 3 years is crazy. It's like Chicago like 10 years ago, right? What they've done is fantastic, so credit to them. But I want to get into, and we're going to get into the goaltending before we wrap up as well, but one thing, and I don't mean to give my prediction away too early, but one thing that I think separates the Oilers from the Panthers this year and why the Oilers will win the Stanley Cup, and it's from this article from Oilers Nation as well, but obviously some stats from other places, and just the eye test as well, the good old-fashioned eye test. But if you look here, I mean, the Panthers' fourth line is their best line. Their top line in a lot of these series hasn't, it's not that they've been bad, but they're getting, equally matched, right? So I feel like that's going to be a huge factor, especially when you're going up against Connor McDavid. But the other thing is, if you look at the Oilers, their playoff run since 2016-17, when Connor McDavid first made the playoffs, look at their net goal share. I mean, they're scoring way more goals this year, way more goals for than against this year, and that has to do with Stuart Skinner as well. And one other thing that I think will separate the Oilers from the Panthers is the fact that this year the Oilers have a lot more effective puck movers on the back end. So obviously we know what Florida does with their forecheck. I feel like the Oilers are going to be able to get out of that a lot easier than almost any other team in the league. And obviously when you have Connor McDavid leading the way and that mindset coming into this year, the fact that it's been quite literally a business trip coming to the final, I feel like they're going to win. So any thoughts on this, Casey? I mean, Stuart Skinner, we can kind of jump into that as well. I feel like it has a lot to do with him, even though his stats have been all over the place. He posts a shutout, and then he has one of the worst games you've ever seen. But I think he's going to come ready to play in this finals.
Yeah, definitely. I think the big, thing for the Edmonton Oilers in this Stanley Cup final is going to rely on how good Stuart Skinner is going to play against the Florida Panthers, because he was lights out since retaking the crease. I mean, at one time he was at like a 9.85 save percentage. He has 3 shutouts. There's not been many pucks going past this guy since retaking the crease from Calvin Pickard. So if he can stay hot, I think there's no chance that Florida wins this series, because Stuart Skinner, he's a hot and cold goalie. When he's hot, he's hot. He looks like one of the best goalies in the league. But when he's cold, he's freezing cold. He's taking an ice bath. So I really hope that Skinner can keep it up, because I think what he's been doing in this year's playoffs has been unreal, and I think Florida's going to have a tough time against Edmonton this year if he is hot. But I think it's going to be interesting. Like you said, the big thing on the Florida side for me, you kind of mentioned it too, is the fourth line. I mean, AJ Greer and Gadjevich, these guys have came out of the woodwork. Nobody knew who these guys were coming into this year's playoff, but everybody knows who they are now, because whenever Florida needs a goal, Maurice is putting out that fourth line, and the forecheck that those guys have are ridiculous. They come up with the puck like an insane amount of times on the forecheck, and then either Greer or Gadjevich are waiting in front of the net for them to throw it out there. It is ridiculous what this line is doing, and I am interested to see how Edmonton matches up against this line, because that's a line that really gets this Florida Panthers going and gets the energy going throughout the lineup.
Absolutely. What Paul Maurice has done with the forechecking of this team, man, it is so effective, but it's so simple. I can't believe that, teams haven't been able to figure it out, but I think that the Oilers are going to be that team this year. But again, we'll get into our predictions in a little bit. I did want to bring up Bobrovsky's stats as well, because he's been fantastic, but Stuart Skinner's been better recently, so that's something to keep in mind as well. And looking at Stuart Skinner, he has a 904 this year in the playoffs, despite having almost a 700 save percentage some games, right? So I think that's actually kind of impressive in that way. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I do want to get into final predictions here, Casey, and a quick update on Connor McDavid, because there was an injury scare as well in practice, but it's a good thing they have a week off in between games, I guess. But Paul Maurice said last year after winning the Stanley Cup that the Panthers weren't really joking from the start of the year. Yes, you crack jokes and stuff like that, but he said, I was telling funny jokes for months and they weren't laughing. They were serious. They were mad about 2023 and losing to Vegas. They wanted to win the Stanley Cup last year. I see the same thing from Connor McDavid and the Oilers this year. It was a business trip through the first 3 rounds. Now the real fun begins for them. They want the Stanley Cup, and I have a hard time believing that they're going to lose. And again, I wanted to bring this up that Connor McDavid had a word with the training staff and left practice early yesterday, and the rest of the group was still out there. By all accounts, Chris Knobloch said he's ready to go, but I wonder if he's going to be 100%. They're going to need him. Yes, they have depth scoring, but I mean, if you take a look at this is pretty impressive over the last 4 playoffs, so they're going to need him. And last thing I wanted to touch on is this image from last year and the fact that he stayed on the ice to greet everyone coming off the ice before he left himself. I have a hard time, and I want your prediction here, Casey. I have a hard time believing that the Edmonton Oilers are not going to win the Stanley Cup this year. So what's your take? Who's going to win it? How many games?
Yeah, sorry, Florida fans, but I definitely agree with Darius here. I think all the greats win in their second appearance to the Stanley Cup final, and McDavid is definitely the great of this era of hockey. So I don't think there's a way that this team does lose, because they are going to be all cutthroat with the killer instinct in this final because they want to win. They know what it feels like to lose now, and it absolutely sucks. They were gutted at the end of last season. So I think they go out and they make quick work of this Panthers team. I think a gentleman's sweep in 5 games.
Wow. I think the Florida Panthers are going to put up quite a good fight still. They're a very good team, of course, but I do see the Oilers taking the lead early, taking a significant lead in this series, and then closing it out in 6 games as well. I have a hard time believing that they're not going to win the Stanley Cup. Like you said, every great's second time. It's a learning experience. Gretzky lost in his first Stanley Cup final. Not everyone is perfect from the start. It's a learning experience, and Connor McDavid is bringing what he learned last year, which was a very emotional playoff run, into this year where they've had less of the highs and the lows, and they've just kind of gone in there and done their work, and now they're, I think, ready to go. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I do think that Connor McDavid's going to win a Stanley Cup, and a lot of people say he's not a leader. Based on what we saw in the Amazon documentary too, I think all of the players are ready to run through a wall when stuff like that happens. I think he's an incredible leader, probably one of the best captains in the league, and I think few people care about winning the Stanley Cup as much as he does, and I think he's ready to do that this year. So it's going to be fun to watch. I think it's going to be a very competitive series and a lot of mind games going on because, of course, they saw each other last year. But we want to hear what you have to say in the comments. Who wins the Stanley Cup this year? How many games? What do you think will be the deciding factor in this series? Because it could be the goaltending, it could be the forwards, the defense. There's so many different factors in this series. Florida's forecheck, how does Edmonton handle that? Let us know in the comments below. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything going on in the NHL.